Hello, and welcome to this edition of Pembroke In Depth. With me today are Select Board Clerk John Brown. He's also the chair of the Public Safety Building Committee. Fire Chief Jason Viveiros, Police Chief Rick MacDonald. Today we're going to talk about the proposed public safety building. We have several items to discuss today. We're going to start by reviewing the existing conditions in our police headquarters and our fire headquarters. We're going to talk about the history of the public safety building and the process that we've gone through to get where we are today. We're going to discuss briefly response times and what the new locations will do for response times. Really important. We're going to touch really quickly on the Turner House. We're going to talk about what the new buildings mean for the department. Finally, we're going to get into some cost estimates and what that means for the taxpayer. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Talking about the existing conditions at the fire station. I'm going to have the police chief give us a quick overview of how he sees the current operations at the police headquarters and what there are several problems, deficiencies in the building, inadequacies as a result of the building being as old as it is. The police station was built in 1978. So if you do the math in 78 to 23, it's coming up on 50 years old. Most buildings, public buildings at that age, are starting to age out. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Can you tell us a little bit about the building? And then let's get into some of the deficiencies.
Well, the building itself was probably undersized within 10 to 15 years after it was built, based on several things: the growth of the town, policing when it comes to technology, and the idea of it looking the way it looks as a house with 3 stories, that almost every space there is inadequate. We currently have a lobby space that's the size of a closet. We have multiple people coming in and out of there day to day, and sometimes when you're dealing with issues with people coming in, they're too close to each other and it's not set up properly. The private meeting space that we have, we utilize for several things. There's actually computers in there. So officers will be doing reports in there at the same time, people having interviews along with our lunch breaks. It's a I think we use 10 different things in that one lunchroom / meeting room. Our lockup areas, the cells are not sight and sound in compliance with the state. The juvenile cell is non-operational at this time. Report writing room is in the same room we have our breaks. So if somebody has to go in there for an interview, we have to actually stop our breaks and leave the building. Evidence in property rooms are inadequate. They're property rooms in the attic. It's not properly stored up there as far as the environment. It's either really hot or it's really cold. And the evidence room is just way too small. We have to use foot lockers to store some of the evidence. Parking area is not secured, so the general public can go into some of the areas that are mean to be protected, like most police departments are. And our sally port is used for storage facilities. If you know anything about sally ports, when we take detainees out of a controlled area, it should be a sterile area, and it's not.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe for us what a sally port? Just for the viewers, our current sally port is basically a drive-in garage that has a whole bunch of other storage, from motorcycles to bicycles to equipment, and that you drive in and have to back out of. Can you describe for us what an ideal sally port, what modern police facilities have for sally ports, and how they function, and what the prisoner transfer process is?
We almost have to treat it like you treat the booking area or any area of the detainees have access. So again, it should be free from any storage, and it should probably have an access and egress that are separate. So you can drive in one way and drive out another way. You're able to secure that facility, that area of the sally port, to actually take a prisoner handcuffed from that area to the booking area without any problems with anything in that particular square footage.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk briefly about the cells. Our current cell structure is where we have the adult cells, male, female, juvenile, and the juvenile cells all located in one area. Under current standards, that's not allowed. Can you describe what the current standards would be and why that's not allowed?
Well, the current standards are, again, sight and sound. So the area we're in now is definitely something you can hear everybody talking in that one area. So if an adult is talking to another adult that's a detainee and there's a juvenile on the other side of that, obviously there's going to be conversations that a juvenile probably should be listening to. The same thing with the female side. Everything is probably within 6 feet of each other if you take away a wall. So the idea of doing that is just the footprint itself will never ever support that, ever.
Right. So I'm going to shift a little bit and talk to the fire chief and have him describe. I'm going to focus first on the central headquarters, and then we can talk about the other two stations that are out there briefly, very briefly. But can you tell us what the existing conditions and some of the problems with that? And at some point, we'll show what the bunk room actually looks like, because that is a huge issue. So.
Sure. So our building was built in 1976. It was built when we were doing less than a quarter of the calls we do today, and we had a quarter of the staff. So over the years, we've certainly outgrown the station. It's not sufficient to house as many people as we are. It's not equipped properly, and there's some structural problems. We have cracks in the wall, structural cracks in the walls. The floor in the apparatus bay has settled over the years from the weight of the apparatus, where we have areas that have become trip hazards because of that. We've had to cover them up with steel plates. You talked about the bunk room. We have one bunk room for the entire staff, so there's no separate sleeping quarters. We strive to have a diverse workforce, but we don't get a lot of female applicants, and I think that a big piece of that is we don't have an adequate space that attracts that. Everyone's in the same room. Decontamination is a big issue. Structural firefighting gear, we know there are increased rates of cancer in the fire service. Today we have our washer and dryer system we use to clean the structural gear. You actually have to bring the gear through the station, through the living areas, in an area to be washed. So it's exactly what they tell us not to do, is what we have no other alternatives right now. We've had some testing done. We know we've had water issues in the station. We have electrical conduits where we have water every time it rains, literally pours directly into the basement of the station. We know we have some mold issues. We have asbestos floor tiles that are cracking and become an issue. So we have a lot of health concerns as well.
Yeah. So let's actually dive into the decontamination and talk a little bit about that. Modern fire stations have, right off the apparatus bay when you return from a call, decontamination and laundry facilities with proper drying. Let's talk about what the new building how that would correct that. We currently don't have that. Right. As you indicated, we have to walk through the main areas of our fire station, the admin and the living areas, that really don't allow for proper decontamination. So the new station, in contrast to where we are today, can you just give us a quick overview?
Sure. So
of
a couple things. Right now, our turnout gear is stored out on the apparatus floor. It's exposed to the diesel dust. It's exposed to the sunlight, which deteriorates the gear quicker. In this new facility, we'll have a gear room where all the gear will be stored. It'll be away from the living quarters. And one of the biggest benefits, we don't currently have a decon area, and this new facility will. So what will happen is when a firefighter comes back from a fire, they'll be able to take off their turnout gear. They'll have a laundry facility for it right there where they won't have to bring it into the station. And then they'll have a shower area where they'll be able to take a shower before they go into the living quarters and properly decon, which is a really a major advantage. Yeah.
So let's shift and talk a little bit about the history and the process that the Public Safety Building Committee has gone through. I'll just note that back in 2004, the town's master plan, which is now expiring, and we have a master planning committee that's currently updating that master plan, noted that both the police and fire stations should be rebuilt, and that it also stated that it would possibly combine the stations into one police and fire headquarters, which is what we're doing now. In 2016, the Select Board formed the first Public Safety Building Committee. That was after town meeting voted for study and to hire we hired Castle Brews as architects to perform that study. There was a $50,000 appropriation to do that. They did that study. It kind of fell away because I think the cost scared people a little bit. In 2017, that study was complete through and basically put on the shelf. In August of 2021, the Select Board reinstituted this. The need was there. There was definitely a push to talk about it. And John is the chair of the Public Safety Building Committee. So let's talk a little bit about what the committee's done. Can you just give us an overview of the steps, the studies, and everything? The committee's been meeting for about 18 months now. So can you give us a quick overview of that?
Well, when I was asked, when I wanted to be chair for this committee, I really wanted to figure out what our needs were in the first place. And then the first meeting that we actually had to let the public know, I said, ask for everything, pare it down to what Pembroke is, and then look out 20 years to make sure that we could have enough so we could grow, because our community is growing as it is. I mean, we're between 18,500 people to about, I've seen most of like 19.3 in certain years. So, I mean, just looking through what's going on with the property itself, when we did the response time, which the chief definitely alluded to, when we see what these new stations will do for response time, bringing it down, where our ISO rating will come on down, not crazy amount, but it will come down itself. The site plan to make sure that this was feasible. We looked at, I believe, was about 3 other sites, and this was the best one for us. And then when they did the traffic study to look forward to what we could do to make it better, and since there's a fire station across the way, there's a light that we're going to try to get back for this and make sure people don't block the station itself. Other areas do it within the South Shore and even Boston of trying to get in and out of their places because of heavy traffic. We know 53 during certain times it does happen that way. People come on down there, but there's also times where it's dead during the weekends. So I mean, this facility, because the Commonwealth in the beginning wanted more combined stations and helps us out economically with shared services, especially with dispatch. For me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I understand people concerned about the budget of it all, but we've been kicking this can down the road for almost 20 years, and we need to get this done for the folks that protect and serve us, but also bring forward to the next generation beyond me as a board member.
Mm-hmm. So we've done that traffic study, as you alluded. The traffic study says that absolutely it can be supported there. It's just going to take blocking off some areas for egress and ingress to the building and making sure we have the proper light timings. That will work out really well. A couple of other studies that we've done that have indicated that it's good. We've done a phase 1 environmental study, and we've done geotechnical studies for the sites, and those studies all show that the sites are viable for this purpose. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and let's talk about the advantages of a combined public safety building. I'm going to just talk about the technical advantages. One of the biggest advantages is the cost to build it. The economy of scale of a combined public safety building is huge. Large projects attract much better and much more competitive bids. The contractors will refine their pricing. The cost per square foot tends to be slightly less than the smaller structures. You have shared utilities. You have a single septic. You have a single water service that comes into the building and then separates to the two sides. All of that provides savings in the cost to build the building. Shared utilities and space. A single building can obviously save funds in those areas after the building is built. There are shared spaces within the building, and I'm going to ask the two chiefs to talk about that briefly. And then there's operational efficiencies after the building opens also. The HVAC, you have one big power plant, the combined dispatch where you can, and I'll have them talk about that too, where talk about where we are today on dispatch and what the new station will mean. Maintenance, combined maintenance where you're maintaining one building versus two. Training space is huge. I'll ask the chiefs about their current training space and what the new training space will mean. And then one of the biggest things that some of the fire and police, industry magazines have noted is the informal communications. When you're separate, you see each other on Zine where there's an accident or a fire or something, and there's formal communication, but you don't have that informal communication when you're passing a hallway. That can be huge for camaraderie and even improve in efficiencies. So let's go back and let's talk about the advantages of a public safety building real quick. Let's talk about training. I'll go to the fire chief first this time. Tell me what you have for a training facility in your current structure.
So right now, we have a very small classroom that's in the basement. Certainly not ideal by any means. What's exciting is we'll be able to have real training in this building, and we'll be able to offer classes to the public, which we can't offer now. To get to our training room now, you have to cut through the living quarters. It's not handicapped accessible, so we can't have training for the public. But we'll be able to have CPR classes and other types of what we call community risk reduction training for the public, and it's exciting. The other thing is when the State Fire Academy, when they do trainings, they require a room of a certain size to come down and do that. So we'll be able to be a host community for Mass Fire Academy trainings as well.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, the training for the police is inadequate. Most times we use the town library for our training based on numbers, and shared space along with the community can utilize this training space for whatever, or have meetings. A joint operations center, which we talked about during extended contingencies like storms. I think that's a huge factor. Because the police do the emergency medical dispatch, we actually take the calls, and then if it's fire related, which is medical or fire, we'll transfer the call. That redundancy will be removed if we share that joint dispatch area. And we'll have a police officer and a firefighter at that front dispatch area 24/7. That's a huge component. We already have a great working relationship. We go to a lot of calls together, and it only makes sense that we work and share the same space. As Bill said, that sometimes that informal stuff is more valuable when it comes to getting to know the other side of the coin when it comes to first responder world.
Mm-hmm. This other thing that we don't talk about a lot, and both of the new fire station on School Street, as well as the combined, we'll have treatment rooms. And EMS has changed so much over the years. We know community paramedicine, where we're doing the scope of care has increased dramatically. We have walk-ins to the station every day, and we have nowhere to treat them or evaluate them outside of the public view. And both of these stations have proposed stations have that, which is a great advantage.
Yeah. So
may I interject for
Sure.
one point? When we actually had to do grant writing for the firefighters, we had to use the library. Now with this new facility, they could actually do it in their own facility while hosting. Well, we had firefighters as far away as Worcester, I believe, for that, and that was 2018. We haven't done it since because of the spacing is not there.
Yep.
And to piggyback on that, when we do host, we don't have to pay for the training. So whoever comes in and does that training, they offer so many seats for police and fire for that training, depending on what it is.
Yep. So I want to talk about one more piece and talk both with the chiefs again. When we store equipment that doesn't fit in our buildings, where do we currently store that?
A lot of it's out in the parking lots.
Okay, same for the police?
Parking lots, yes, it's in fact where people think the satellite fire stations are just utilized for storage right now.
Right.
And pretty much that's it. There's no running water. Is there power in there even?
There's power, but there's no running water. It's the Station 3, which is directly across from the future public safety building. It's no more than a garage, like the chief said. It doesn't have running water. It just hasn't been maintained, and we just use that to park vehicles.
And so what does that mean for the useful life of that equipment? Obviously, I'm going to answer this question. It shortens the useful life. So we've had a lot of discussion about the storage facility that we're proposing, which is essentially a garage that's behind the public safety building right now, that we will be able to take that equipment and store it undercover. It is effectively just a garage. It's not, finished office space at all. It is just that, a garage. So it will extend the useful life of that equipment and protect the equipment from
And
weather
also
conditions.
give us a place to work on the vehicles. Vehicle maintenance. We don't have a vehicle maintenance area, so that garage is potentially a spot where we can do that.
And I think it was brought up about the square footage, and did we need that square footage? Well, we're talking about a police boat, a fire boat, UTV, ATVs, mountain bikes, motorcycle,
Pima
trailers.
yeah.
So those take up space, and you need that space. And you need to look at like movement to grow. So that if there's other equipment that comes along through technology, we need that space, and we're not deficient right off the bat. The big picture is, what we don't realize is that they were talking about the lack of maintenance. It's not lack of maintenance, it's just that things have changed in the first responder world, and the footprint that we're existing on right now is just not adequate to support that. Our locker rooms in the police station, I have them in the hallways, in the raw cellar. You know, they're not even in one spot because I have no space. My department is doubled in size.
So I'm going to shift. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. I'm going to go back to Selectman Brown at this point. And we're going to talk very briefly about the Turner House and why the Turner House has to be moved. Obviously, through the planning process, it was found that the Turner House and the Public Safety Building are basically need to use the same space. So can you just talk for us about the process and why we had to go to the HDC? And what the outcome of that was.
Okay. Well, the property, even though that the town owns the property, it's in the historic district. And the Historic District Commission has say over what the use is, if we can build on it, if we're able to move the house, which we did a couple of, I would say forums, but a couple of meetings with them. And after the second meeting of getting a compromise going on of moving the house so we can move forward with this building. Because and people have to understand too, with this building, it's also the combined station, but also we can't forget about the School Street property either, because it's part of the whole process, and that's the reason why when you see the economics of it, that the price is a little higher than that, because we want to make sure we take care of all sides of town. But with the Historic District Commission, we're able to get that through and be able to build and move on with this property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I know there's a lot of discussion about the Turner House. I mean, ultimately, the HDC has jurisdiction over that area because it's in the Historic District Commission. They've given us permission to move the house, and we're planning to move forward with that. So let's go back real brief and talk about response times and what the new plans mean to response times.
Yeah. With this new plan, we'll be have the majority of the town will be in under 5-minute response time, and that's really significant. In our line of work, every second matters. I've talked about it at other meetings, talking about how fire doubles in size every minute, and how how it really makes a big difference on how quickly we get there. We talked about cardiac arrests and other medical emergencies that we respond to every single day, where your odds of survival decrease by 10% for every minute that goes by. So to be able to increase, to be able to improve our response times by minutes is extremely significant and will save lives.
So, police, after our meeting the other day, someone said to me, well, why aren't you talking about police response times? Well, the answer is...
Well, we actually are on the road. So we have shifts where we take a roll call and then we're on the road, so we're not coming from a brick and mortar building for response.
Right. The police are already out there in sectors around the community, so their response times effectively don't change. So let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about where we are in the planning process. The committee has worked with Castle Booze Architects. We have completed site plans, we've completed conceptual plans, we have cost estimates, and we know what the tax impact is. On the site plans, we're looking at a station at Washington and Barker at the intersection there, virtually across the street from our current Station 3. And then we have a station planned as a satellite station on School Street adjacent to Monroe Street, also on property that the town already owns. So we're not buying any property the town has bought, and we already own all the property where we're planning this. Conceptual plans, if anyone wants to see them, we'll splash them up. They're also available on the town's website. If you go to pembroke-ma.gov and you look at under the Public Safety Building Committee, there is a ton of information, much more information that we can cover in this short discussion today. So we're, take a look. Please go take a look at what's going on. But let's shift for a little bit, talk about the new buildings and the size and what that means. The main station, the headquarters for both police and fire, As I said, at 53 in Barker is 43,000, planned to be about 43,500 square feet with that auxiliary garage that we talked about. And I want to, again, bounce it to the chiefs real quick to talk about the individual sections and what that's going to mean. And then if you could each touch upon shared space. We'll start with the police chief this time.
Well, technically, it's two different buildings, really, combined with common space. So when we talk about a price tag of $60-something million, we're talking about really three buildings, not including the Turner House, which is actually, the movement is included in the price tag. So we're actually, even though we share the same footprint, the fire will be on one side, police will be on the other. The other only common space will be obviously the dispatch area and whatever training we might do together, along with the gym or some type of workout facility, and a hands-on training area where we could do, in police world, it'd probably be simulation stuff. I don't know in the fire world what they would have, but that's the kind of space that's valuable. And a lot of times, we don't even have to leave the building to have that kind of training.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, having the combined dispatch center, having a place where if we have a storm, we'll have an emergency operations center and be able to communicate much better. Having individual bunk rooms in these stations is really something that's just so needed. The decontamination areas we talked about, and like I said, having these situated in ideal locations that will really improve response times makes such a difference.
Yeah, so let's shift real quick, talk about the proposed costs. These costs were completed by a professional cost estimator. We would require that as a community, and then we'll get into as we close, we'll get into the next steps. So the building, the buildings as we've discussed today, the total project cost is $61,140,000, and then that's broken out to just over $42 million in actual construction costs. And then you've got the equipping costs, which is the furniture, fixture, and equipment, your loose equipment, your security, your technology, your IT, your radio systems, and then of course your other costs, what we would refer to as soft costs, are your architecture and engineering fees, the OPM, the peer review, testing. You want to test your concrete, you want to test your steel to make sure that that is actually what is spec'd. And then the contingency money in case there's unknowns. There's always going to be small unknowns in a project, and we try to do the best we possibly can to eliminate any of the big unknowns. So that's the building cost. What does it mean for taxes, and how does that compare with other people that are telling me that, why can't we build it for what Norwood did, or Norwell, or Situate, or some of the other recent ones? Well, they were all built prior to 2020, and their square foot, if it's adjusted for the current marketplace, and please go on our website and look this up, but the PPI, the cost indexes have gone since 2020 over 37.5%. So that's why we can't build it for those prices. If we added 37.5% to theirs, we would be exactly where we are today. So let's talk about what it means for costs and what the next steps are as we close. The average taxpayer cost is about $45 to $48 a month. That is $545 to $586 a year on your tax bill. Unfortunately, that is the cost. I mean, we can't do anything about that. However, our firefighters and our police officers deserve the best we can offer. Final steps, final notes today. May 9th, town meeting, 7 o'clock at the Pembroke High School will be the vote for the appropriation, and then there'll be a required Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion vote on May 13th at the annual town election. We would certainly ask for the public support for our firefighters and our police officers and our public safety employees in general. So as we close today, I want to thank our guests, Selectman and John Brown, and also the chair of our Public Safety Building Committee, Fire Chief Jason Viveiros, and Police Chief Rick MacDonald. Again, thank you for joining us for Pembroke In Depth.